If you've Plucky Works has only been around for a year, so many of you might not have heard of us or what we do. So some of this is just a really basic introduction to what kinds of problems we care about, what sorts of things we're trying to help small newsrooms with in particular, but the tool can be used by anyone. And then I want to show you how MuckRock Accounts was really useful for us in all of that. And I'll tell you a little bit about how this has been used by newsrooms and the kinds of problems that it's helped them solve. But I'll start just with a quick background here on me. I haven't met a lot of you. I recognize some faces in the audience here, but not everybody. So I'll introduce myself briefly and then tell you about the project. So the problems that we care about and that I personally care about are namely with Plucky Wire, that small newsrooms really need access to stories from other newsrooms. So the real example of this is when there's a story that's just outside of your coverage area. So I'm from New Hampshire. I developed this tool in collaboration with a bunch of tiny little newsrooms in New Hampshire. And the best example of this was at the beginning of COVID when nobody could move that well anymore. And let's say a newspaper on the western side of the state, New Hampshire's a tiny state, but going west to east is still a problem. It takes a couple hours. If you're on the western side of the state and you're supposed to cover something on the eastern side of the state, that's going to take your whole day. That's going to be a really inefficient use of your time. And you know that a newspaper over there is going to cover that story already. So this is right outside your coverage area. Or if you're a topical outlet, this would be something kind of on the fringe of what you do, but you know other outlets are going to cover it quite well. You don't need to spin up an expert internally on whatever that topic is. It would save you a lot of time if you could just reprint that kind of thing so that your readers have access to good content that broadens the coverage that you can provide. So the questions when you're trying to source that sort of coverage are, will it be reliable? First of all, that's an editorial question. But then in practice, we found that will it be affordable? And that's where you start looking at the existing news wires from the big urban papers or the national newsrooms, which provide excellent, excellent content, but it tends to be there are some barriers to entry, namely like very expensive contracts, multi-year contracts. It's just hard for a small newsroom that's just trying to figure out how WordPress works, how on earth to get the money to access that kind of thing. So we care about this issue a lot because efficient republication lets the small newsrooms focus on the core issues in their community more, or the core topic that's central to their readership. We don't want them to have to be really inefficient gathering this stuff from the fringes. The other thing that really motivated Plucky Wire is that correction alerts are just awful. And they're a pain in the butt for everybody, no matter what, because it's embarrassing. You have to admit your mistake, all that kind of thing. But if you are offering your content for easy republication, a lot of the big Creative Commons outlets nationally do this. If you don't know who republished your story, you don't know who to send that correction alert to. And that means you're probably going to have to send that correction alert to a lot of people. You're just going to have to, it's going to be embarrassing on a whole new level. And you're going to have to spend all sorts of time flailing around on Google or on MuckRock to figure out where those reprints are, which is both tedious and error prone. Because if something's on MuckRock, how are you ever going to find out if something went into a print only publication? All of that time would be much better spent on actual original reporting. And we want to help you do that. So lots of smart people have been thinking about this for a while. So why on earth is Plucky, why is it worth it? Why is Plucky Works a thing? And why are we the folks who are working on this right now? So my personal background on this is that I've worked in a bunch of different fields that has given me sort of a grab bag of skills that has been useful in this domain. So I worked as a documentary film editor for a long time, where basically all the real journalists, I just had massive professional crushes on all of them, wished I was as cool as they were. So I had my own little foray into pretending to be a foreign correspondent when I was covering the Philippine drug war in 2017, 2018. And that ended up turning into a history PhD because I realized I am not suited for the hustle and the grind of being a proper journalist, but I could be a really slow journalist, which is what you are when you're doing a history PhD. And in the process of that, I learned how to code. And the reason why I learned how to code was that, like a lot of journalists in really small papers, you have just some basic research questions that you'd like to solve that are a pain in the butt to answer if you don't have the right tool. And in my case, there are about 300,000 pages of local newspapers in Davao, which is where the Davao Death Squad started. If you've been following the International Criminal Court case with Duterte, you might have heard about that. There were 300,000 pages of stuff that documented the early days of that, but it only existed in paper form in this one warehouse in Davao. And I only had about 6 months. I had to digitize all of that. So I figured out how to do some Python. I figured out how to build some pipelines to digitize things. And we ended up building the largest digital newspaper library in the Philippines, which isn't to say it's very fancy, but it worked. It got the job done, and other researchers have been able to use it since then. So when I finished the degree and I was working again with the Granite State News Collaborative, with whom I'd been volunteering for about 5 years at that point. This is a group of 20 community newspapers in New Hampshire that have been sharing content informally, like with Google Drive since 2020. We've done some low-grade technical projects, like we have a very janky data library, which was basically some spatial data sets that we derived from public data sets that we wanted to make public. I had also spent a stupid number of hours building an army of web scrapers to try to track all the reprints, the same problem I was describing before. But all of a sudden, we had access. I had some technical skills we didn't have before. And we thought that this whole republication issue, the issue that I started out describing, was really starting to grind on people's nerves. And we knew enough at that point that this is not a huge technical problem. This is just some file sharing issues and some story discovery issues. We thought this was solvable. So Plucky Works is really just the combination of I have this grab bag of skills, but the newsrooms that I work with, they know how the newsrooms are supposed to work. And so I talk to them every day, and they're the ones who are suggesting features. And together we're putting together these tools. So Plucky Wire, Plucky Works is currently me and a couple of freelancers. And there's some information about the tech stack there if you're a bit of a nerd and you're interested in that kind of thing. So big picture here, we're building a national wire service for local news. Another way to think of it is this is a way for you to build your own news wire. We want to make it really easy for especially not small newspapers to be able to share content with each other in the format that they're used to thinking about, which is a sort of news wire. So I'm going to show you how this works in just a second. But big picture here, we're just a year old. We started last year, just last week, actually, we shared our 10,000th story, and we've shared a little more than 20,000 photos. We have more than a dozen news collaboratives across the country and a couple of university journalism programs now, a dozen international outlets. About 160 something outlets have been registered so far. Most of those are very small outlets, like 1 to 3 staff total. We've got some medium size and some statewide newsrooms, some NPRs, like local NPR affiliates are on now, and a few national newsrooms. So we're definitely we're young and we're growing, but the tools that we're building are starting to be useful to more and more people, makes me very glad personally to see how much time it's saving for these folks. So I want to jump into the demo so you know what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to share my screen in a second, and I'm going to walk through these things here. I'm going to start with just what it's like for editors when they're using Plucky Wire, what it's like to find stories. I'm going to show you what it's like to upload stories. And then I'm going to briefly touch on some of the automations that have really saved folks a lot of time. So that's automatic RSS imports. We track analytics so you know where your stories went. We offer email digests, so it's easy to tell people about new stories when they're coming out. And the big one that has saved people a lot of drama, in particular, correction alerts. I'll show you how like all those things fit in this pretty flexible ecosystem where you can join a bunch of different content sharing groups and be able to participate in lots of networks. And then at the end, I'll show you how you could join Plucky Wire if you were interested in doing that. And part of that is when I'll talk about MuckRock accounts, because that has really reduced the barrier to entry for a lot of folks. So I'm going to switch my screen over now, if I can manage to do that. Sanyan, can you see new screen now? It says Plucky Wire. Okay, great. So this is a test database that I'm showing right now, so I don't overload my internet. But this is going to show all the core features here. And then at the end, I'm going to show you what it looks like in a live instance, just so you can see what it looks like when it's fully fleshed out. So this page that we're looking at right here is the search page. This is where editors spend most of their time. You've all seen interfaces that are really similar to this, and that was part of the point in the design. We want this to be as intuitive as possible. So this should feel just like a kind of spruced up version of Google Drive, which is how most collaboratives in the country have been sharing their stories so far. But on top of Google Drive, we offer some features that have made this a big time saver for folks. One is just that you can search by some journalism specific criteria here. So for our print outlets, they really care about word count. If something's 7,000 words, even if it's a dope story, they probably will not be able to run it. So we let you filter by word count here. You get to narrow that down. For newsrooms that are using tags in your CMS, if you load something with over RSS, for example, we can automatically carry over your tags as long as they line up with ones in the system. And that's an easy way to help outlets track down exactly the stories they want. You can sort just for stories that have audio visuals on them, stories that you've bookmarked. So let's say, Sanyan, if you're in an outlet and you've got a colleague that like you want to find an easy way to flag for them that like, I think this one is maybe going to work for us, but I don't know. You can bookmark it. They'll see that bookmark. They'll also be able to see who tagged it and how long ago they tagged it. So that's another easy way. You can filter by publication date, series. You can also filter by license. So within a content sharing group, you can use a bunch of different licenses. We encourage everybody to use Creative Commons because it saves everybody some stress and it means you don't have to talk to lawyers. I think we all agree days tend to be better when you don't have to talk to lawyers. So we encourage you to go that route, but you can use whatever custom license you want. So I want to draw your attention over here to the right-hand side. Sanyan, can you see a tooltip that's shown up? Okay, great. So what that's telling us here is that that the Burlington Daily Chronicle, which is a fake outlet here, has viewed this story. And what this says here is that the Burlington Daily Chronicle has also downloaded that story. So I'm going to show you what that means in a minute. But what it means now is that anytime in the future, if this story gets edited, Burlington Daily Chronicle is going to get an automatic email alert that's telling them this thing just got updated. So let's say we're interested in this historic downtown story. This is just a placeholder story here, but this shows you everything that's associated with the story. If there are audio visuals, so photos, video, audio stories, now we're sharing a lot of, or if you had embeds, so YouTube, Document Cloud, and Data Wrapper, you can all share those through Plucky Wire here. And those would all show up here for preview. So let's say that this story was looking good. Sanyan thought, yeah, this is going to fly with our readers. We want to display this one. If I'm part of an outlet, so I just switched there from a group admin mode into now I'm in the role of an actual outlet. So then I see this button that just popped up, reprint this story. So when I click reprint this story, a few things have just happened. One is that we've registered this reprint. So now the outlet that published this one, they're going to get a ping and it says somebody just reprinted your story. But we also, in addition to that, we also just sent that story to an RSS feed that's unique to your outlet. So CMSs come in all sorts of delightful flavors, but most of them can accept RSS feeds. And now you can load that RSS feed just into your CMS and will only include the stories that you've chosen to download. So that in practice has made it much easier for folks to access these stories. But we also know that a lot of small outlets struggle to even deal with RSS feeds. So here we offer all the manual ways you can download your story. You could download the whole thing with HTML burned in. If you're a print outlet, obviously you don't want the HTML, and we strip all of that out for you. You can also download all attachments. So that would be all the audio visuals that are associated with the story, and those would all get sent to your desktop with the cut lines, all that kind of stuff.
Johnny, one
So
question before we
yeah.
skip out of this, since it's related to something that you just mentioned, which is the RSS feeds. We had a question from Gregory in the chat. How are series signified in the RSS feed or otherwise?
So series right now, those are not carried over through RSSs or through the RSS. And that is mostly because no outlet has suggested that to us. But I can tell you that from a technical standpoint, the way that we would deal with that is that if that a series would be easily added to an RSS in the category field on an RSS. And we would be able to search for that and find that in the RSS feed. So that requires a little coordination because, as you can imagine, RSSs they can get generated with any information you want to throw in there. There's no sort of like not there's nothing so beautiful as like type checking on the like on their end with an RSS. So it depends on you setting it up properly, but if you set it up properly, then we can identify that and we would be able to assign a series automatically. We
Nice.
already assign things the categories, as I said, as the tags, as I'd said, but also we can set presets for the outlet and the auth or the boilerplates and licenses, that sort of thing. So that would be the way we deal with it.
That's great. Yeah, it just sounds like someone maybe in the chat might be interested in coordinating on something like this. So
That's Gregory Foster. I know Gregory Foster. Good question, Gregory. Good to see you. Um, so I'll continue then. So that's the whole workflow right there for someone downloading a story. So most outlets that are on Plucky Wire, that is as much as they will ever do. They just want to log in, see this, take the 2 minutes it takes to search across all the stories, pull their thing, and they're done. But let's say you want to upload stories. So let's say you're at a very, very tiny outlet. You have no idea how RSS works. It's quite easy to just use our manual form here. So all this is just a copy paste situation. There's nothing extraordinary about this, but we make it easy for you to save a little bit of time when you're adding things like boilerplates. So in practice, we know from collaboratives that share with each other, oftentimes they always want the same text to run at the bottom of a story that says, this story is being shared by partners in the Granite State News Collaborative, or let's say you're a standalone outlet. This story was originally republished in The Conversation or whatever. You want that text to show up everywhere. Boilerplates are an easy way for you to do that. You could also here associate the series that you want and the license. So we encourage everybody to use Creative Commons, but like I said, you can upload whatever you want. So the automations are one of the things that I reference that saves folks a bunch of time. And so RSS is the biggest time saver here that we have so far. We're talking to outlets now about building plugins for some of the major CMSs, but we're not at that point yet, so we haven't quite done that. So RSS, most CMSs, no matter what weird flavor they come in, they can all do some version of RSS. And so we've been working with a couple dozen outlets now to set up RSS. So when you set up your RSS feed, you add in all the information there, and you can enable automatic imports. So when you're set up your automatic imports, that's where you can set the default license for the stories that come in there. That's where you can set a default series. Let's say you have a feed, you can set up a feed from your CMS that is just local sports, or it is local, like community theater. You could associate that with a series and run it that way. You can bring in your boilerplate. And let's say you want to share your stuff, but you also don't want to share it immediately. You can set a default embargo on stories that go through the RSS. So for example, I was just working with an outlet the other day. They want everything to get shared automatically. As soon as it hits their CMS, they want it to go out, but they want 48 hours of exclusivity. So they would just add in 48 here. We would put that behind an embargo for 48 hours. And then once that naturally clears, all the outlets would be able to access that. I'm going to switch screens here to show you what analytics looks like in a live instance. If I can recover, there we go. So we provide analytics both at the group level and at the outlet level. And Sanyan, can you see my screen again now? Okay. So what we're looking at right here is a group level analytics. So this is everything that's been going on in the Granite State News Collaborative for the last 6 months. So you can see we've been sharing about 150 stories every week, and folks have been reprinting maybe around 50 to 70 stories on a regular basis. And now Granite State News Collaborative happens to have an outlet within it that also goes by the name of Granite State News Collaborative because they have some freelancers. And so here we can see that they've shared 128 stories that have been downloaded 134 times. Here we can see all of the outlets that have been engaging with that work. You can see the views each time an editor has decided to read your thing, and also the number of downloads. So you can see we're pretty tight with the Keene Sentinel. Keene Sentinel likes our stuff, and we like them, so we keep them close. And you can see down here stories that we have viewed or that we have downloaded and how those stories are performing. Analytics are something we're adding to all the time because, as you I'm sure can all imagine, you could have a ginormous dashboard to cover all sorts of analytical whatever. We don't want to overload people with this. We work with people to figure out what they need for their annual reports, basically, and we make sure that it's very, very easy for them to access the information for that. I want to show you how to create or join a content sharing group. So what I showed you before, this is all within the Granite State News Collaborative. But let's say I wanted to join. Oh, yeah, Sanyan, I think you have
Sorry,
something.
one question since we're still on the analytics from the chat is, are all views by editors or by readers as well?
So what we're looking at right here, these are views by editors. We offer pixel trackers, and so you can get page level views. And we're working on an embedded widget that would be a little more durable than the pixel tracker because if the widget loads, then we can track a lot more information that way. So we're working with folks on that one. There hasn't been massive demand for that widget just as of yet, which is why it's not public yet. But if that's something that you're interested in, definitely email me because I'm starting to work with some outlets in New Jersey and in Washington on specifically that issue. So that would be something where I'd love to include you in the conversation.
Related to that, could you just drop your email in the agenda when you get to it? You don't have to get to it right now, but
Yes. Okay. That'll be in the slides also, but I'll try to remember
or I'll
that.
do it
Ping me.
actually. I can do it right now. It's all good.
That would be much appreciated. Okay, great. So content sharing groups within Plucky are like little islands of content. And that's in part because we want folks to be able to share as privately as they want. Let's say you have a small group of outlets that you only want to share with them locally. There's no need for anybody in the wider world to know about that exchange. There's no reason that they would want to be able to join that. But there are lots of situations where you want people to be able to join a bigger group because of all of the network effects that come with that. So here we're looking at, this is the live version of Plucky Wire now. So here we're looking at all of the content sharing groups that are currently registered online. So here's an example of a really exciting thing that's starting to happen in Washington State with the Evergreen State Newswire. This is something that's coming out of a journalism fellowship program at Washington State University. And they're producing content that is taxpayer funded that covers issues all over the state, and they want that to be freely available to anybody. So what's going to happen with them and with a couple others here is that they're going to make their content freely available to anybody who wants to join. And so it's starting as a university journalism program, but they have ambitions to turn into a statewide collaborative. So that means that all the outlets in Washington or folks that are interested in stories from Washington, there's going to be a place where they can go to join that, where they can get high quality original content from the local outlets from around the state. So in order to join one of these outlets, all you'd need to do is, let's say we were interested in content from Canary Media. Um, they are interested. They're in the process of sorting this out right now. If they want to proceed, they might be pushing all of their content through Plucky Wire to make it available to everybody. The conversation is doing this right now. So you can click into the Conversations newswire. You can see the licenses that they use. You can figure out who to contact if you've got questions, who is allowed to upload stories. Right now, the conversation is just they're the only ones who can upload stories into this group. You can see recent stories that they've published. And I'm already associated with this group, but there's a button that would show up down here and you would just be able to join if you wanted to join. So now we're coming to the end here. How do you join Plucky Wire? So we're adding more and more ways to do this, make it easier for you. But right now, if you want to create an account, you can do that in a few convenient ways. One of them is just manually input your stuff and you're good to go. Or thanks to this partnership with MuckRock through MuckRock Accounts, you can just click on this button here, sign in with MuckRock. It'll send you to MuckRock's page. You sign in there, and then we will register your personal account, and if you have an organization, we will register your organizational account. So MuckRock has done a great job of going through and labeling the organizations that are working newsrooms versus all the other kinds of stakeholders that they have. And so if you have already been labeled as a newsroom, then we automatically approve your outlet's account, and you're good to go. If you haven't gotten that label yet, then I get an email and I'll work with you and verify you, and it takes very little time at all. So that's how you would join. If you, let's say you run a news collaborative already and you're interested in making it really easy for your partners to join. Once you're in, you can send them just a link, and that link, you can send it to everybody that you want to join. They can click that, it'll walk them through the process, and it'll end with them on that search page that we started with. So you don't have to worry about them getting lost in 50 million screens of registration or credit card signups or blah, blah, blah. There's none of that. It just leads them right to the page where they can access your content immediately. Sonia, and I think that's kind of that's the overview there on the demo. So I've got a couple other slides that I'll switch back to now, and then I look forward to questions. So Sonia, can you see I'm now on my screen on the
Yep.
thingy again? Okay.
Yep.
So because we are in MuckRock's house right now, I feel obliged to tell you about how helpful it has been to use MuckRock accounts. So I have heard that it's made it significantly easier to onboard interested newsrooms. So there have been lots of conversations I've been a part of now where folks have been, they've heard about Plucky Wire, but it's like, well, you're not the AP. Like, what are you exactly? But you can go to Plucky Wire, and if you've got a MuckRock account, it takes all of 10 seconds to get fully registered. That's been a really, really big benefit. So if you're building tools and your mission aligns with MuckRock and you're interested in doing this, I encourage you to start a conversation with them and see if this sort of thing would be useful to you, because it has really made things easier for us. We've had no issue reports so far, like from a technical standpoint. Well, Sonia, you could tell me privately if things have lit on fire from things I've been doing, but so far everything's worked really well. It's been very seamless. And last I checked a couple of weeks ago, about 40 newspapers had signed up using MuckRock accounts since integration. So we are now, a lot of the really tiny newsrooms we work with, they're not on MuckRock. And so we have been figuring out ways to make it figure out their needs for what's going to make it really easy for them to onboard. And I expect Alan Lasser's the guy at MuckRock I talk to the most, and I expect I'll be talking to Alan about ways that we can all help these small newsrooms get hooked up to all the great other services that MuckRock offers.
And
So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Oh yeah,
totally.
Sanyan.
Just to plug in, it's also in the agenda, but if you are also building cool tools like Johnny is with Plucky Wire, we do have a little institutional funding from the Knight Foundation to build infrastructure around these journalism tools and making it more accessible to folks. So if you do have a tool that you want to integrate with the MuckRock Accounts login service, I'm just dropping it a link to an application there. It doesn't even have to be fully developed and working like Plucky Wire is right now with a bunch of newsrooms. It might just be an idea. We'd like to hear about it. So please do apply. That application is open. Uh, that's all I got.
And I'll tell you, it'll be worth your time if you start that conversation. So I'm not gonna belabor you with self-promotional stuff right here. I've done plenty of that already, but I've been really, really pleased so far with the response from especially the really small newsrooms that we work with and with the news collaboratives, especially for the news collaboratives who have been trying to coordinate sharing between outlets for many years now using Airtable or Google Drive or something similar. Just switching to Plucky Wire has made it's saved many hours per week and hundreds of hours on a yearly basis. And it just makes writing those year-end reports way, way, way easier. So I've been really relieved about that because those collaboratives tend to serve the really tiny newsrooms or the newsrooms in rural areas where otherwise there would be news deserts. And I personally get really excited about helping them, the folks there. And also the folks who work at these tiny little newsrooms tend to be really dope people, so I like hanging out with them.
We need to
So
foster local news, especially
yes,
in rural
yes. The
areas.
little newsrooms that you have no idea how they're still in business, but like thank goodness they are, those are the ones that I like the most. So if you did want to try out Plucky Works, Plucky Wire, feel free to try it out. It's low risk and it's very, very low cost. So actually almost everybody right now is using it for free, except for the big universities. And MuckRock makes it very easy to sign on. You can try it for free in perpetuity if you wanted to, and sort it out. See if it actually does save you time, and if it does save you drama with those correction alerts. And if you did start using it a lot, if you started wanting to reprint a story a day, two stories a day, then like you can start at 15 bucks a month for everybody in your whole newsroom. The whole point here is that it's really, really affordable. Small newsrooms should not have to like get a grant or like hire a lawyer to figure out how to do this stuff. This is very much, we should all have access to basic tools like that. So what's next for Plucky Wire, for Plucky Works? One is that this week actually we're finishing in a new part of the site that's an open library. So for all of the publishers who are creative, who publish under Creative Commons or similarly very permissive licenses, we're going to make it so that those are front and center so that you can browse all of those things even if you're not already signed up with Plucky Works. We want to make it very, very easy for folks to access this great material that everybody's doing, but is currently siloed off in all sorts of weird parts of the internet. The other bit is widget-based reprints. So I mentioned this earlier. That speaks to the page view tracking question that somebody spoke about earlier. If you need, or your advertisers need your CSS to travel with your stories, the styling's really important to the whole display and everything. We're working on that right now. So if that's something that you really care about, then I encourage you to reach out because I'd love to include you in that conversation as we're building those tools. Other things that we're working on, I'm just going to mention these, but if you're curious about any of them, I'd love to talk to you about them. One is a collaborative events calendar. So small newsrooms in particular won't lose as much time and money trying to solicit events from the community. And there are a lot of basic events that are of broad interest, and we want to make it easier for them to collect those collaboratively and share those. A platform that makes it easier to solicit and pipe in citizen reporting into the rest of your editorial pipeline. There's a lot of great stuff going on in your community that you do not have time to cover with your professional journalists. We want to build tools to some scaffolding so that it's easier for you to engage with the public and get those tools in. Some tools for editorial feedback and story budgeting, impact tracking. There are folks, I want to Dan might hate me for this, but Dan Haugen at MinPost is doing awesome, awesome stuff thinking about these tools. And if you're thinking about this stuff, you should reach out to Dan. You should talk to me. There are a couple other folks who are thinking about these things, and I would love to talk to you about them. So these are things in the pipeline. I am currently looking for full stack developers who have experience working with or in small newsrooms. So if that's you and you're game to work with a pretty scrappy gang, then please email me. I'd really love to talk to you. I think that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Sanyan, for inviting me today.
Totally. It looks like we have one more question in the chat. Um, do republishers need to have an account, or can we send them links that they can access to single stories?
So you can send them, that's a good question. We, so currently you can send them a link to an individual story, and then we walk them through the basic registration process, which is just two screens to get their outlet signed up. The reason why we do that is so far the default has been that most people really do want to know where their stories are going. So all we're getting here is just the contact information for that outlet and the name of the outlet. We've heard from two outlets so far that they would like to have an anonymous option where like we're just a pass through for an anonymous person to take your story and reprint it. So we can definitely see the need for that. One of the big downsides for that is that you won't know who's republishing your stories, or you won't know who to send correction alerts to. But if that's something that doesn't, if that's not an issue in your case, then email me because there are a couple other outlets that I'm talking to about that now, and as you can imagine, it's easier to offer stuff without requiring any information than it is to require more. So this is very, very feasible. We just haven't had enough of a demand for it. So reach out. I would love to talk to you.
Great. You also have a comment in the chat if you want to read from Audrey. Some just
Oh,
some appreciation your way.
great.
Great.
Yeah, and Audrey, you probably know that lots of really like Heather Bryant was working on something like this about 10 years ago. Other folk, AP Story Share is one way that people have thought about this. INN has been thinking about this, Distributed Media Lab. Lots of smart people are thinking about this, and we just wanted to offer something that was simpler and more importantly, more accessible to more people. Um, so thank you very much. And I encourage you to look at the other options out there if you haven't heard about those already, because there are lots of exciting, after a long period of slow innovation on this, it seems like lots of folks are now thinking about it in a really exciting way.
Totally. I'm going to cut the recording now, but then I'll leave room for if anybody has any additional questions, they can feel free to do so.